Well, then speaking of that ROI, right? I mean, once contracts are centralized in a focused and singular way, and the strategy around them is made very clear to everyone in the organization, that in and of itself, I imagine, starts to create some efficiencies. But leadership needs to be able to prove that, both to themselves, maybe to a board. So how do you begin to quantify that ROI immediately of something that maybe can be, harder to tangibly grasp, which is awareness, right? How do you quantify awareness and its ROI?
Definitely. And you're right. Having control on your contracts isn't a dollar amount. It's but the things that we see coming out of it, especially right away. I mean, we'll see. And I used to train many facilities in the past, and it was
boots on the ground.
It was a great job. I could take credit for the implementation that had already happened, but so we would go in and we would look at duplicate vendors. We would, and it was almost every time, and it still is. Right away, paying on contracts or paying a vendor that there's no contracts on. Maybe the contract expired 5 years ago, but no one cut off payment. We see that quite often, and in many cases, the savings you find right away can pay for the first 2 or 3 years of your CLM system. So it's that dramatic in many cases. Outside of that, compliance risk. We continue to see, especially lately, the OIG is getting even more aggressive coming out of COVID, and being able to avoid penalties, but also just being able to sleep better at night. Having the reporting and the visibility across the organization. And then the last one, and this is very important with the consolidation that we see. As there are disparate hospitals within a overarching health system, being able to leverage purchase power. What are you paying? You may have 5 different contracts with the same vendor paying different prices. So being able to put together a roadmap of how we see cost savings, through that next year as they renegotiate those contracts.
Yeah, and that just intrinsically carries so much nuance in it, right? And I think that's key to remember. Again, it harkens back to our first points at the start of this conversation. But each organization is going to have a very different, reality that they are dealing with, and a very different set of dynamics, different, groups to create buy-in with. And, there's always the interpersonal layer. I mean, the people running these departments, you got to be able to speak to and build relationships with those specific people running that department. They got to believe it, and that takes a human touch. So
absolutely. I mean, involvement and communication. People are less resistant to change, right? When they understand what change is coming and how it's going to affect them. So, while we're largely implementing a software and a technology and, laying out a roadmap, that communication plan is so imperative, like you mentioned, regardless of what stage it's in.